All right, it is 7 o'clock. I want to start off by thanking everyone for coming. I'm going to start with a slide deck. I'll introduce those of us that are on the screen. So I'm Chris Timmis, Superintendent, Dexter Community Schools. I've been the superintendent in Dexter now for 10 and a half years. I live in Webster Township. And this is our fourth forum we've held. We held one in person back in December. In the evening, had 25 or so attendees. We held one during the day last week at the Senior Center. We had 60 attendees. And then we held one last week at Creekside, and we had about just shy of 50 attendees. So right now we're looking at about 35 logged in. So we've had lots of interest, and our goal today is to update everyone. So on the call here on the screen, we have Dr. Sharon Rashke, who is our now former CFO. She was our CFO for 25 years, and as of January 1st, moved to be the senior project manager to help manage this project. And then Craig McCullough, he's principal of operations. He was the principal of Cornerstone, then Anchor Elementary. So anybody that's had kids that have gone through the district, everybody knows Mr. McCullough. So what I'm going to do is start off with, we have a presentation that we like to go over. I'm going to share my screen here. Move a couple things around. So what we'd like to do is start off by, I never like to lose an opportunity to kind of get background on what we're trying to do in schools. And then we'll get into the multi-generational community center. So several years ago, before the pandemic, we sent out this exact question to all of our parents, our students, our staff, every resident in the community, and our alumni. And we received thousands of responses. And the question was, what are the most important skills, knowledge, and character traits our graduates need to be successful in their futures? The answers turned into what we call our HELM, or our learner profile. And as a district, our vision is champion learning, develop, educate, and inspire. The answers to that question about the knowledge, character traits, and skills that our graduates need to be successful fell under the areas of information literacy, content knowledge, and financial literacy, collaboration, creative and critical thinking, communication, kindness and empathy, personal responsibility and resilience, and initiative. So when you see this logo around, these are the characteristics, knowledge, and skills that, in other words, the competencies we want our graduates to have when they finish Dexter Community Schools. So our goals for this session, for this meeting today, is we want to clarify the funding and the project scope of the senior and multi-generational community center. And then we want to gather community input on the project. So what we're going to do is go through all the information, and then we're going to open up to questions after we finish. It's not a lot of slides, but I think we can answer a lot of the questions right up front. So, outcomes. When we refer to multi-generational community center, we mean a senior center plus a community center. We want to talk about how does Dexter Community Schools create a sustainable model of this senior and community center, the location and what's tangible, what is actually tangible, and the most likely location is Dexter Community Schools purchasing the wellness center, operating it very similar to how it operates now initially, and then the senior center having a specific space or building. And we'll get into more details on that. What is known and unknown in terms of funding and what's possible under each scenario. Why is Dexter Community Schools asked to create a multi-generational community center, and how it is in the best interest of kids. And then community input on these concepts. So to give you background, historically, Dexter Community Schools and the Dexter Senior Center have been really close. Oh, I forgot to do this slide. When I refer to we, I mean all of the Dexter Community School District. We are a community school district. So we means everybody on this call, everybody in the community, all the different entities, et cetera. So background, Dexter Community Schools and the Dexter Senior Center have had had a very formal relationship and have had since the early 90s. The Dexter Senior Center, its current location, is in our former Copeland building. We had a lease with the senior center starting in the early 90s for $1 a year for the space, plus they paid utilities. That has been a long time agreement. When the school district, when we sold the Copeland building to the Encore Theater, part of the sale agreement included providing the senior center with that continuing relationship for several more years while we worked on a permanent space. So we entered into that agreement. We moved the community, or the district sold the Copeland building and moved into Bates during the pandemic, which did derail the timing. We went for a recreation millage, which would have provided the seniors with funding, and we were going to provide a permanent space, and that didn't pass, but we didn't give up. We are committed to supporting as a community school district. So thanks to the generosity and the leadership of our legislature, specifically our local reps, Senator Sue Shink, Representative Jennifer Conlin, and Representative Carrie Reingans, they helped move forward as part of the state budget an $8.5 million allocation to Dexter Community Schools. The exact language in the law says to a school district located that encompasses a city with a population between 3,750 and 4,250 residents, in a county with so many residents, et cetera, which is Dexter Community Schools. The money must be spent though by 12/31/26. It's part of 4 projects that were in the budget for senior and community centers. There's one at Waverly Schools, there's one for the city of Livonia, and there's one more out there that I can't remember off the top of my head. The original language, when it was passed back in June and July, said that the funding was for the construction, renovation, and program establishment of a senior and community center. The problem with that original language, and those funds would have been available October 1st, the problem is it didn't allow us to acquire any property to construct, renovate, or establish a program of a senior and community center on. So we had to work with the legislature to get in the supplemental budget that they passed in November, the word acquisition in one place and the word acquire in another. So the language as it is passed and the funds have become available in February now because of the budget process and the supplemental is there have been $8.5 million allocated to Dexter Community Schools for the acquisition, construction, renovation, and program establishment of a senior and community center. And I want to be clear, it's senior and community center, so both have to happen. The funding's through the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Specifically, we are working with the Department of Aging for the funds. So what is known and unknown for the funds? So right now, we are secured and we've been approved for the grant funding for the $8.5 million from the state of Michigan, which are federal funds from the Recovery Act going through the state, then to Dexter Community Schools. Those funds must be spent by 12/31/26. The Dexter Senior Center also received some additional funding from Washtenaw County. Those are federal funds from the American Recovery Act sent through Washtenaw County, which those funds are secured, but they have to be spent by the end of this calendar year. And they are for the inside of a building. And then Craig McCullough and I spent 60 to 80 hours each this summer writing a $2.5 million grant request from the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity for Michigan Community Centers. We submitted the grant request in August when it was due. The notification was supposed to happen in October. In October, they told us, they shared with all the applicants that notification would happen in November. In November, they said December. In December, they said January. So we are anticipating to find out yes or no in this month. Right now, we're moving forward as if we did not receive the funds. If we receive them, that's great. We can add some program establishment. Meanwhile, Representative Debbie Dingle, or Congresswoman Debbie Dingle, has put forward a request as part of the federal budget for a $5 million federal community project funding for a senior and community center. That's been tied up in the federal budget process. If you go to Congresswoman Dingle's website, you'll see the project. All legislators have different projects. This is how they upgrade water treatment plants. They'll build bridges. It's part of the normal federal budgeting process. And they've already been, when it ends up, we're at the point that it is approved through her office. However, it's subject to the federal budget process that they're in continuing resolution. So it would have been passed in October and then November, and then now we are where we are. So that money, we will get somewhere between $0 and $5 million by the time the federal budget, or after the federal budget passes. So currently we are positive we're confident on the 8.5 million. So for the 8.5 million, what is possible? This entire project is extremely collaborative. We have been working Dexter Community Schools hand in hand with the Dexter Senior Center Board and their facilities committee. We've also been working closely with 5 Healthy Towns, who owns the wellness center, and with other local groups that could help us get this project complete. So for $8.5 million, we believe we could purchase the Dexter Wellness Center and the equipment. We can also build an 8,000 to 9,000 square foot approximate space for the Dexter Senior Center on the property. We can also cover our administrative costs, legal fees, and architectural costs to make this happen for the community. It's a fairly complicated project, but it is extremely possible for the 8.5 million. What is missing is we have to squeeze it into the 8.5. It really would be better if we can get the 2.5 or the 5, we could do a better job and do it more comprehensive with some program establishment. But for 8.5, we can purchase the wellness center and the equipment. We can build a space dedicated Dexter Senior Center facility that is between 8,000 and 10,000 square feet, and cover administrative costs, legal fees, and architectural costs for that work. So why Dexter Community Schools? So as a community school district, our boundaries do not necessarily go around municipalities. So our school district is 84 square miles. We go through Washtenaw County, and then we go up into Livingston County, up near the chain of lakes. We encompass the entire city of Dexter. We own about a quarter of the city property. We have about 360 acres as a school district. We go through part of Dexter Township, part of Webster Township, part of Scioto Township, part of Northfield Township, part of Hamburg Township, part of Lima Township, part of Freedom Township, and part of Lodi Township. So it's logical. Everyone that lives in our school district identifies that they live in Dexter. For the city or one municipality to have to provide a community, a senior and community center is fairly complicated, and it's taxing on one community. But when you work through the school district boundaries, we are able to encompass the entire Dexter community, which goes through all of these municipalities and parts of these townships. As a school district, we have one large campus, and the campus is fairly unique and provides us with some great opportunities. So for example, right now I'm sitting in Bates, which was our original elementary school. It was built in 1952. Creekside, which now houses 5th and 6th graders, was built in 1956. Wiley was originally the middle school, and that was built in 1965. Anchor Elementary, which used to be Cornerstone, was built in 1995, along with Mill Creek Middle School. The high school was built in 2002, and we own the high school property along with the 90 acres behind it, plus several houses that connect our property and the pedestrian bridge for students to be able to cross the street. on Shield Road. The Jenkins building was donated to the school district to operate our preschool programming in 2014. We serve infants as early as 6 weeks old. I was in the baby house the other day and there were 11 babies. If you ever want to have a great day, go into a house with 11 babies, as long as none of them start crying, because then the domino starts. But when they're not crying, it's fantastic. We sold the Copeland building in 2020. We built what is now the Dexter Early Elementary Complex when we built Beacon in 2019. We built that building and opened it in 1 calendar year. We also built the Sirianni building for our alternative education program over here on Shield Road. The Wellness Center property, this is the parking lot of that property. It abuts to our district property. The district actually owns this little road going through here. We own all of this land behind the Wellness Center, and our board office used to sit around the entrance where the Wellness Center sits now. So the property for the Wellness Center and that entire property, it directly abuts to Dexter Community Schools property, which is fairly logical for us to locate a senior and community center there. So the two likely locations to be able to do this project at $8.5 million. We have option A and B. They're in no particular order. It was just left to right. So option A is to build, just imagine a 9,000 square foot building, 1-story building on the outlot right there on Baker Road. To give you an idea of the size of that, if you look at the old farm, or what we call it the pharmacy building, but the pharmacy moved out. The pharmacy building there, that is 2 stories, that's about a 10,000 square foot footprint per floor. So imagine that footprint right here. The other option is to attach it to the Wellness Center, which gives us 2 options. We've been working with designs and cost estimates to see which one makes the most sense financially and fits within the $8.5 million. And we'll make a decision. So the senior center board will make a decision which one they would like, their facilities committee, that makes the most sense for within the budget and for their operations. So the senior center, in order to have a sustainable model, the senior center needs a permanent facility and they need operational funding. This plan, as it sits right now, of creating a separate senior center space, either attached to the Wellness Center or out front, would be a dedicated 9,000 square foot, roughly, space designed to meet the needs the senior center has identified for their programming and not used by anybody other than the senior center unless they chose to rent it to somebody. As a school district, we would lease it to the senior center on a long-term lease, way past any time that I would be here or anybody else. So I use the example, like you do 25-year leases, it could be longer than that, at $1 a year and plus utilities. So it would be a dedicated senior center space. For the school district, in order for us to maintain a sustainable model, first I have to reflect on and explain how schools are funded in Michigan. So our operational funding is for K-12 education from the state of Michigan, and we are funded on a per pupil basis. So in 1994, voters passed what was called Proposal A. Proposal A increased the sales tax from 4% to 6%. That 2% increase goes directly towards the school aid fund. It then put limitations on property taxes for schools other than bond projects and bond funding. So for operational, there is a 6 mil tax on every property in the state of Michigan, up to 18 mils on every non-homestead property. Those funds all go into a big pot, and the state legislature decides every year how much money they will give us per student. So suppose they give us this year, I think it's around $9,000. They send us $9,000 per student to provide a minimum of 180 days of instruction and 1,098 hours of instruction minimum. That includes busing, athletics, band, orchestra, choir, drama, books, salaries, everything we do, utilities, everything we do to operate. The state controls those funds. They also send us an amount that we send back for mandated retirement cost. So for example, we figure in about a 53 or 54% increase on every dollar that we spend on salaries. Goes back, it goes to FICA, 7.7% roughly, FICA, workman's comp, et cetera. But then about 46 or 47% goes back to the state towards the pension system. We don't get to determine that. We have to pay it for everybody that works here. So as a school district, we have to make sure what we do when we create the senior and community center, the multi-generational community center, is how we make sure that it is sustainable. So our pre-K 12 programming can be held in that facility, but we're not looking to create a class or create it as a school. We have a course maybe we can run that would make sense to run a PE course over there. There's some great studios. There's a spin studio. I mean, we could run a spin class and bus our kids over for an hour when it's in the lull times, because there are steady flow to the wellness center when it's got more people and less. We could set up student internships and experiences for students that wanted to go into recreation management, or they possibly wanted to be personal trainers, et cetera, and some other learning opportunities for our kids. User fees will be necessary for the multi-generational community center. The senior center will have their own membership that they operate on. And then for the wellness center component, user fees will be necessary because we should not take away funds that are provided to the district to provide a K-12 education, to pay our teachers, to pay our staff, and to provide a high quality education. We cannot use those funds to support a multi-generational community center. So the user fees will have to make it self-sustaining. We are looking at contracting with an entity to operate the multi-generational community center with a plan to maximize all ages access and programming. Somewhat similar to how it operates now. We would own the facility and we would contract to a company or an organization to actually operate the center. And that company or organization would have to be revenue over expense as they operate. We have examples of this we can go into after I go over the full presentation. So what may be possible if additional funding requests come through? If we receive the $2.5 million or any or all of the $5 million, we could do program establishment costs, which we could do some things with user fees, et cetera, for program establishment. We can also create additional community spaces and programming opportunities to meet needs of the community. We have a wide list of needs. Our community is a small city and multiple partial townships. Naturally, there's some needs that would be utilized within the community. And as a school district, we can help support that. So what I want to do now is I want to open up to questions, and we have three of us that can answer. So I'm going to stop my share. And I'm going to go to the attendees list. I see one question in the Q&A, and I'm going to read that question. And then if you have a question you'd like to ask, just raise your hand. We have about 49 attendees right now. So the question looks like volunteering for some help. So thank you, Cody. It looks like you have some a contact of someone you know that ran something similar in a community in Iowa. So I appreciate that. Let me keep that right there. Okay. So we have one question. Are there management companies that you have in mind for operating the center? Yes. So currently Powerwell contracted to operate the Dexter Center, the Chelsea Center, and I think those are the two. Maybe Stockbridge. They might manage Stockbridge. So that is one company we want to talk to because we want to try to keep it as stable as possible in the transition. There are other organizations like the Y and organizations like that that we've had conversations with. We need to do something logical, and it may be multiple options down the road, but priority wise, we need to do something first that is really smooth in a transition. So we've been talking with companies that do this kind of work. We've also been talking with Power Wellness, who already does the work, and organizations that do this kind of work. Sharon, is that a good answer? Let me know if you want to talk at all. So, all right, got another question. I am now an adult member of the Dexter Wellness Center. Do you have any idea how the membership fees would change under the new ownership? Currently, we're not looking to change much if we can avoid it. We'd like to keep it pretty similar. The current model without the mortgage. So the way the Dexter Wellness Center is set up is Five Healthy Towns owns the Dexter Wellness Center along with the Chelsea Center, the Stockbridge Center, and no longer Manchester, right? But they have a mortgage on the Dexter Wellness Center building that is significant. It's a significant cost per year. When you take out the mortgage, the operations of the center, it is sustainable. It is revenue over expense, the fees and the membership amount, or the membership is enough to be able to keep the center strong and sustainable. So by us getting this allocation, we can take off that large mortgage cost, and it is operationally sustainable as it is. So I would imagine the fees would be similar. At least up front, they'd be similar. Our goal ideally would be to find other revenue streams and we get other money from these grants to do something to help offset some fees. I saw a hand up, but then it went down. Does anybody have a question? Oh, have you run projections of increased membership as well as possible decreases from current membership at the Dexter Wellness Center? We've met and looked over their historical books. They honestly, without that mortgage and without 29 lawsuits from the city, would the Five Healthy Towns, it would be completely sustainable. But spending millions of dollars fighting lawsuits for 10 years really put the mortgage in a bad spot, but we're able to help clear that up and help get the mortgage part taken care of so that the center can operate. We've looked at all the data. We've looked at Power Wellness's numbers. We've looked at Five Healthy Towns numbers, the historical numbers, the current. It is extremely sustainable without that mortgage. And by getting this allocation, we can take that mortgage issue out. So it's no longer a challenge. Oh, here we go. Will persons who are not Dexter community residents be able to use the new center? Yes. As of right now, it would operate similar to how it operates now is what we envision to start off. What we want to do is have access, because I know when we spoke with Five Healthy Towns most recently, there's an agreement as members go from the Chelsea Center, the Dexter Center, Stockbridge, et cetera. So we'll have to work with whoever we have operate to make sure we can still provide that option, because if we can provide that option, that's ideal. You want it to be used. Forgive me, but why legal issues for Dexter Wellness Center? That's a long story. Short version is there was a dispute over whether taxes should be paid or not by Five Healthy Towns to own the center. And the city sued multiple times and millions of dollars were spent. And that actually chewed up. Five Healthy Towns is a foundation that has a set amount of money to support Dexter, Manchester, Chelsea, Stockbridge, and Grass Lake. And the funds could only be used they're the one-time funds. They were working off the interest, but with the goal to spend it down to support, and then they had to chew up millions of dollars in legal fees. Are the current financial numbers public and available for review? Um, they're Five Healthy Towns' numbers. They're not ours. So I don't think so. But we have spent the time to look and discuss to make sure it's sustainable. Would you be adding programming at Dexter Wellness Center for children K-12? Currently, there is none specifically for those ages. Recently, the Wellness Center expanded some, I forgot what they call it. It's not teen programming, but some teen programming. What we'd want to do is try to make sure that it's family programming and accessibility is there, but we want to make sure to be conscious of the center and the senior center have to support all ages, but doesn't mean all ages have to be there all at the same time. So when you look, we're in school, and I know some of the peak of the wellness center use is school starts, the center's packed with adults and seniors, and then midday it kind of weans itself down a little bit, that picks up again after school, and the groups change. So we would work within those groups. I do not envision at any point us running any athletic programs in there, et cetera. We have 1 million square feet of space as a school district. There are spaces we could use. We need an area with turf and things like that indoors, but the wellness center, we already have 2 pools as a district. Those pools are too warm for us to use for competition. Competition pools have to be between 78 and 82 degrees, which is really cold. The pools at the wellness center are warm. The gym's really not a competition gym. We have our own weight room, et cetera. So we have a lot of anonymous attendee. If you want to put your name, it makes it easier to know, or if you want to raise your hand and just ask, feel free. Will the mission and programming of the Dexter Wellness Center change? And if so, how? It is hard to imagine retaining similar programming with an influx of youth. It's a great question. Honestly, we don't plan to turn it into a school. We already see kids, our students go there after school, the teenagers and the high school kids, a lot of times to work out. I was in yesterday and I saw multiple of our students on the snow day in there working out. So our kids are going there on a membership basis. I can't imagine that changing much. Sorry, I joined late. Just confirming the new center will be fully owned by Dexter and will be a remodel in place of the current center. Will there be future meeting on input of design? Okay, so the plan right now within the 8.5 million is there is enough money with, given the great partnership and collaboration we've had with the Dexter Senior Center Board, the county funding, our own state reps, and Five Healthy Towns for Dexter Community Schools to purchase the current wellness center, keep it in operation, and then to build a 9,000 square foot senior center, either attached to the building or on the outlot on that campus. The senior center board and facilities committee they're determining what they need as a senior center. It's their center. We would just own it and help make sure it happens, but it would be the Dexter Senior Center's building. So they would decide no other renovations if we do that are really necessary in the wellness center. Have you or Dexter Wellness Center surveyed current members for input on how the center may change their concerns, et cetera? No, we have not. We don't actually have a membership list. Essentially where we are is we have been given $8.5 million to help address a need in the community. The wellness center is for sale because Five Healthy Towns can't sustain the mortgage. This would take care of the mortgage and we can operate the center. The senior center needs a space. So we're not looking at any major programming changes. We are trying to help address a problem and make it long-term viable and continue to serve our community. Is there school tomorrow? Yes. I don't care if every other district around us closes. We are open. Our kids need to go to school. You are using money from the state of Michigan to acquire the Dexter Wellness Center. Besides that money, will the city of Dexter be assessing residents be taxed through additional millages? That would be up to the city of Dexter. We would have no involvement in that, nor would we even ask them to do that. We're using the money to purchase the building and the property, and to acquire, construct, renovate, and program establish a senior and community center. So if the city would have to then contract with us if they did a city tax of some sort. But they're a separate entity. We are a division of the state, similar to a city, but we can't ask them to do any. They can't tell us what to do. We can't tell them what to do. It's a separate government entity. So they have no ownership stake in this property. What happens with Meals on Wheels program? We want to continue, the senior center wants to continue the Meals on Wheels. The design of their new space, and when they've talked about needs, includes their needs for Meals on Wheels. Temporarily, what we'll have to do is go through a couple iterations. The senior center has to move out of the current Copeland/Encore building soon. So once we acquire and finish a purchase of the wellness center, we will need to move the senior center into the current ATI space while their building is being built. Their space, as we talked to a builder, we need to spend the senior center's funds that they're received by the county this calendar year. So our goal is to get this done this calendar year with a building built. Are there plans to add a community pool? There are no plans. For the $8.5 million, we can afford to purchase the wellness center and build the seniors a space. Any plans to add adult sports programming leagues or other adult, not senior enrichment activities? We will talk with whoever we contract operations of the wellness center component with and see what they can add. Is there a plan to increase parking once the senior center is added? There's a little space. I don't think there's space to add parking there in the current setup. I have to look at that lot again. If we receive the 2.5 or the 5, our property connects, so we can easily add parking, because our parking lot for Bates is about 25 feet away from the wellness center parking. What services and programs would be offered by the senior center not already offered by the wellness center? The senior center is a separate 501c3 that does an incredible job of serving Dexter seniors. Anybody that's ever seen their programming, it's fantastic. They have some overlap with wellness center program, but not that much. They have their own set of programming. At any given point, like we were at the senior center the other day, there were 60 seniors there. It's a great program, and they have a great operation, and they'll continue to coordinate their new programming. They've looked at space that they need and what they may need to use. If they need to do something like warm water aerobics, they're not going to build it. We're not going to have another pool built in the new senior center. We would have to work out an agreement with the operator so they could use the pool. But that's a good example. Great job in this presentation, Grandma, of a Dexter preschooler. Go Dreads. How does this option differ from what Dexter Senior Center would have done if the previous millage had passed? When we pursued the recreation millage, that would have actually provided operational funding too. So the senior center still needs operational funding. Part of their equation is they need a permanent space plus operational funding. Right now they work on funds from grants and fundraising and donations from the municipalities. So they still need long-term funding. If the recreation millage passed, they would have had $250,000 a year for funding. Why not build a new building on the 90 acres behind the high school if you plan to keep the wellness center exactly the same? Why purchase another building to maintain? That is a great question. The wellness center, if it was to be built right now, it cost, I think, 11 or 12 million to build it at the time. If it was to be built right now, it'd be 17 to 20 million dollars. We are going to be able to purchase that building and build around a 9,000 square foot senior center for 8.5 million. It would cost us 17 to 20 million to build that building right now. So it is way more cost effective to buy that building. It's a beautiful building. It's been for sale for almost a year. It is a great community asset, and this allows us to keep it in the community. When do you anticipate getting this started? With added number of people using the Dexter Wellness Center as our plan to add space in locker rooms, workout space, and studios. We need to complete this entire project, including we need to build the senior center space and have this project completed essentially this calendar year. So there are no additional funds to add on right now outside of a senior center. If we get the additional funds, those will have a separate timeline and we can look at what we can add on or what other spaces we can create. But in the current form with the 8.5 million plus what the seniors have received from the senior center from the county, we can build a 9,000 square foot senior center by the wellness center. And we are planning to have that done by the end of this calendar year or really close to it. Will ATI be able to return once the new senior center is built, or do you have other plans for that space? Temporarily, we need the space for the senior center. Once that is complete, then we can start talking in 2025 about what makes sense in that space. Any chance this might be included in the Silver Sneakers program? That is a senior center program, I think. That would be the senior center would have to, they have their own staff. That's a good question for the senior center folks on what they would do. I think they already do Silver Sneakers. I don't remember. No, they don't? Okay. But that is a senior center function. Why didn't 5 Healthy Towns seek out the $8.5 million grant and essentially do what Dexter Community Schools is doing now? If the only barrier to continuing Dexter Wellness Center was the mortgage, the grant would have taken care of it, right? Yes, it would have. However, the state grants went to governmental units. So as a school district, we were a governmental unit that could manage large federal grants. We manage millions of dollars of grants a year. So I think that's why we ended up being the entity. Oh, Silver Sneakers. No, it's actually a program included with some insurance programs. Okay. We can talk with whoever our operator is for the wellness center component. The senior center, though, would also be a group to talk to about Silver Sneakers. That's a programmatic that would make sense with the senior center. Did anybody want to ask a live question? We're happy to turn the mic on and so you can ask. I think I have all the questions that have been typed in answered. Oh, here we go. I'm still a little confused about the operational plan. Sharon, your turn. See if you can word it a little different.
We are working on the operational plan once we get the infrastructure components more nailed down. We are talking to various entities. The center itself will operate under the school district's a special revenue fund that is set up specifically for this multi-generational community center, and it will need to have its revenues cover all of its operational expenses. And the best way that we believe that can happen at this point is to contract. We're not leasing the wellness center out. We would be contracting with some entity that has the experience to be able to operate such a facility. So there are more than 2 entities that potentially could do this short or long term. But again, short term, we're trying to keep it as consistent as we can with, there's the reciprocity with Chelsea, and we want to try to keep it as similar as we can. But until we get in those discussions with various operators, we just don't know. And that's what we're working on as soon as we kind of nail down that if we're going to buy the wellness center, how much we're going to pay for that, what we're going to do to build, what that looks like. We need to get those things nailed down before we really have too many discussions on the operational side.
Okay. We have another question about operational money. So I'm gonna deviate a little bit and explain how, as a school district, we operate outside of just our K-12, 180 days, 1,098 hours. So we have a special fund for community services. The Community Services Fund operates the community ed program, which is all fee-based. We use our spaces, but we run fee-based programming, and 10% goes back to administrative costs, utilities, overhead, et cetera. That program always has to be revenue over expense, so it has to be positive. With Jenkins and our childcare program, we do the same thing. It's all tuition based and fee based, and it has to be positive. We make no money off of it. We just try to be positive. Large program or large facilities upgrades like parking lots, roofs, et cetera, we do those through our bond programs. These two new facilities, as long as we set it up the way we're planning, we will be able to, in future bonds, be able to include if we need to do a roof or we need to do a boiler or something that's a large ticket project, we'll be able to include that in future bonds because it'll be part of the school spaces. We do have some programming for example, our food and nutrition fund, we offer breakfast and lunch for our students, and we run that through the federal school nutrition program. Those funds sit in all operations for food and nutrition sits in a separate fund. The money's not spent over. If we're positive, we cannot spend that money on buying books or teaching kids or paying for buses or paying salaries for anywhere else in the district. It has to be spent on food and nutrition by law. However, they are able to build a fund balance to do when they need new ovens or they need to buy new equipment. They can keep a fund balance in the food and nutrition fund to buy a truck to be able to deliver food between buildings, to be able to buy new ovens, et cetera. So this program, this new fund we've set up will have to operate the same. It'll have to operate where it's revenue over expense so that user fees cover the operations. Large ticket items, we will be able to build into a long-term facility plan that could be put in bonds. So when we need to redo a parking lot or we need the pools, like we're about to do, and I don't know the exact number, but Craig's on the call, like the Wiley pool, which is a community pool. And the funding was passed in the early 90s for a community pool. We've done this community type project historically as a district. The Wiley pool, we have to do about $500,000 project on it's on the filter, right? So we are doing that through a bond program. So when the wellness center pools, when it's time for a large project like that, we'll build it into one of our bonds. I hope that answered the question. Are there any other questions anybody might have? Feel free to raise your hand or type it in. We appreciate everyone taking the time. Oh, here we go. What is the current student population of Dexter, which is a big part of the operation budget for the Dexter Wellness Center? It actually is not part of the operation budget for the Dexter Wellness Center. The current student population of our district is about 3,500 kids. I don't remember the number off the top of my head. Those funds cannot and should not fund the wellness center. Those funds, 90% of our budget is people. We are a people intense business. We're one of the most efficient. We're only like the 10th percentile in the state for administrative costs. We try to spend every penny on the classroom. That includes teacher salaries, parapro salaries, custodial salaries, et cetera, to make the buildings run. So those numbers fund our schools. So the wellness center, this community center, will have to be self-sustaining on membership fees at this time. So most high schools are not graduating the same number of students. Yes, the population in this part of the country is dropping every year. They're predicting 9,000 fewer students in Michigan this year alone, K-12. community ed fee-based program, what is the revenue for this fiscal year? Off the top of my head, I don't know. We have it in our fund somewhere. I don't know off the top of my head. In a good year, that entire fund is probably $1 million, $800,000, somewhere like that. It's a significant amount of money that it takes to run those programs. Most of it's paying for whoever the coaches that's running the community ed team, or the referees for like community ed basketball, t-shirts. I mean, we don't make any money. We try to break even. Thank you. This is all very informative. Thank you. We're trying to, this has been a real unique project because it's had some unique timelines and it still has some moving parts. We're trying to remove and minimize the moving parts, but try to keep a community asset accessible to the community and give the seniors a permanent home. I see Dan has a question. Dan, I'm going to put you up to talk here. You should be, you're able to talk. You're on the main screen. So
Okay.
there you go. All right.
So I'm kind of summarizing what I'm hearing, and Dexter Schools is using the state money to kind of bail out the wellness center and get them out of a mortgage that's causing them issues with their revenue versus expenses. We are then going to hire a company, potentially the one running the wellness center now, and gonna use those users. It's gonna run just like it is. And then I thought I heard there's really no benefit to the schools. We're not gonna use the pool. We're not gonna use the gym. I guess I'm trying to understand the benefit to Dexter Schools outside of keeping a good building in the community, which seems to be able to maybe happen anyway.
So that is yes and no. The funding allows for the creation and the construction of a senior center, which currently the seniors have to move out of Copeland or out of the Encore building. We have worked in partnership with the senior center for decades, and it gives them a permanent space. The funds also allow us to keep the wellness center, which Five Healthy Towns it's been up for sale. They would like to keep it accessible to the community, and Five Healthy Towns would like to continue to help support that program for the community. So for example, in Manchester, Five Healthy Towns helps pay for part of the operation of the Manchester Wellness Center, which is actually owned, I think, by the schools. And then, so the current setup, when Five Healthy Towns purchased the building, they had a plan and a mortgage. They had an agreement with Power Wellness, was probably the original group that was running it. And everything was going fine until the lawsuit started. They spent a lot of money, spent millions of dollars fighting the lawsuits, which cut into what they were able to use towards the mortgage. The mortgage has ticked up, and then they've gotten to the point now, it's actually got, and then they went through a pandemic, which any facility like that really suffered. But what happens is they still want to be supportive of the Dexter community, and that it would be able to keep its original function, which was to be a wellness or community type center. Because the schools would own it, we will work into our agreement with the operator how we want to be able to access. And our original planning is we'd like to offer some programming for kids. Like we have a class at the high school on the books we call Dexter Wellness Center. What happens in that class is the kids, they go in and they pick their activity like a personal workout every day. We're only down the street and we run 1.5 hour classes. So we could have our kids, we could take them over to the wellness center. We'd have to pick the times of day so the wellness center can still operate. And we would be able to run a program there. We would like to add career technical ed programs for our kids. This by the school formally owning that building and contracting an operator for its regular purposes, we'd be able to build in programming that our kids could then we have kids that want to be personal trainers. They could actually teach classes. They could learn how. They could, our kids could learn how to manage a recreation facility. We can create some really unique programming, and we'll build that into our operational agreement with whoever we contract to operate it. So we're able to do some things we wouldn't be able to do in its current form. We do send kids over from one building a couple of days a week, but it's like 15 kids. But we could do more. We just have to be able to make it all coexist. So it does provide us with some opportunity. And it would also give us property that abuts to our property that we could do some things on, which is if we get the 2.5 or the 5 or both, we can add some existing opportunities that would give us multiple more acres to operate. Does that help at all? Oh, sure.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
I'm
Sharon
sorry.
could answer a little more. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sharon.
Dan, I just want to kind of just comment a little bit. This $8.5 million was not to bail out the wellness center. There is a tremendous opportunity by the schools receiving these funds to have $20 to $30 million in facilities for the seniors and for the community at a cost of $8.5 million. This isn't about bailing out the wellness center. It's an opportunity that the wellness center happens to be available, because we would never have been able to build a 48,000 square foot wellness center and another 9,000 to 10,000 square feet of senior space, even on property we owned, with $8.5 million. So I just want to kind of shift that thinking a little bit.
Okay.
Dan, does that help?
Yeah, I'm a little stuck on, I mean, the wellness centers for sale because they can't stay in business. And I asked the question earlier about their financials being public. I would like to see that, okay, take away the mortgage and the lawsuits, and this is a completely sustainable. I mean, you guys said you went through it and it's good, but ultimately this is becoming a publicly run, endeavor that we fund, we the people of Dexter schools, and it would be nice to see that on paper. I don't know if that's an option or not, but that's that would be helpful to me. I'm thinking some other people might be have the same thoughts as well.
Yes. And the challenge for us is we don't own those files. They're not ours. That would be Power Wellness's books who currently operates. We have reviewed those. We've looked at their model, their number of members, their utility, all the cost, and their historical data. And it is operationally solvent right now when you take out that 5 Healthy Towns is paying the mortgage, and that's separate. So we looked at the operational in working with Power Wellness. We don't have that data. It's theirs. They had to show it to us. We have talked with 5 Healthy Towns and looked at the entire model because they operate multiple centers. And we will write into our operational agreement strong language that it has to be operated positive revenue over expense. We are not subsidizing this program. And if it doesn't operate that way, then we'll have to find another provider to do so.
All right.
Well, thank you. Does Dexter Schools feel this is a win for kids? Yes. We received $8.5 million to create a senior and community center. We can get our kids programming. We can buy what would be a $17 to $20 million building with $8.5 million that came from the state and federal funds. without having to tax our community to be able to provide that. And when we look at, we already do programming with the senior center. This allows the senior center to get back right on our campus, right by our schools. It puts it right across from what used to be Generations Together, the Jenkins building, where it was a partnership between the senior center and a preschool. So we're able to do some programming. It really is, it's a community benefit. And when communities, our kids and our entire community benefit from this really unique opportunity. We had Angela said 5 Healthy Towns also supports a portion of the cost of the fitness programming as well as Meals on Wheels for the Dexter Senior Center. Yes, they've been a great community support. It is just hard to see how you can add school programming at the Dexter Wellness Center to maximize the value for DCS without compromising the current use and programming of the Dexter Wellness Center. So some of it is looking at when the times work. So we're not talking about going in and throwing up batting cages. That's not going to happen. The gym is really, we have gyms. We have 7 gyms in the school district. However, the walking track, the yoga rooms, the spin room, the fitness area, we don't have anywhere with treadmills, et cetera. There's opportunity, and there are times in a flow of a day when we could schedule some programming that makes sense. We do it now and we don't disrupt, but we do it at a smaller scale. We just have to be thoughtful and work in partnership. What happens with the $8.5 million if DCS does not purchase the wellness center? It goes back. We have to spend it by December 31st, 2026 or 2025. 2026, 2025. It's on the slide. I think we got 2 years. Nonprofit organizational tax forms are available publicly. Look up 5 Healthy Towns 990. Yes, we've looked them up. We've read the 990s. Isn't it 5 Healthy Towns financials? They basically outsource or hire Power Wellness. They contract operations with Power Wellness. So it'd be they just have a flat number that they pay. 5 Healthy Towns has a contracted agreement. So it would be their Power Wellness's ultimate books and 5 Healthy Towns' numbers. So they're separate numbers because it's an operation agreement. But we've looked them over. They are solvent. Any other questions? We've tried to answer and give as much information as we have right now. And just to give you an idea on the timelines and how this project's going, we found out about the original funds in July. They were supposed to be available October 1st. And then when we had to get the word acquire put in, and we were on track if the federal budget passed to also get some funds in October, some additional funds to make the project possible and full scale. We then had to get the federal budget ended up being delayed. We then put, when the federal budget was delayed, meanwhile, we worked alongside to add the word acquire and acquisition. So that pushed back our funding to February. The seniors pursued funding from the county, which has to be spent this calendar year. We've been working as quickly as we can to make this all happen, but everything has a timeline. So our funds from the 8.5 million are available in February officially. And then they have to be spent within about less than 2 years. The senior center funds are for interior work. Those have to be spent this calendar year. So we're trying to work within the funds. Please tread very carefully with Power Wellness, long-term DWC employee. It's been frustrating at times to work for Power Wellness. They're a for-profit that is interested in maximizing their own revenue, not necessarily serving the community. Thank you. We will be very clear with everybody, any organizer, or sorry, hiccups, anyone we work with, to make sure that they are very clear on what we have to do to serve the community. Approximately how many members are needed at the current rates to make this community center solvent? I don't have that number off the top of my head. We've looked at what they have to be. It's around where they were last year, so they're up above that. I don't have the number at the top of my head though. Just curious, and you may not know this, but were there any other interested buyers for the Dexter Wellness Center? I don't know. That's 5 Healthy Towns. I don't know if they've had any offers. Thank you. You should let the DWC members know all of this info. We will very soon. We're going as fast as we can. If you joined our meeting in December, we had way fewer details than we have now. Every week it goes a little quicker, we get more clear. It's still as if we have a giant puzzle that's been, all the pieces have been thrown to us. We would handed one piece and asked where to put it, and then we get a couple more that go together. We asked where to put it. We're trying to put them together in the most logical way as the puzzles keep coming in. So we'll continue to update as we move along. Very excited about this project. I support it fully, but want to continue being informed. Thank you for your partnership. Thank you. These meeting notifications did not go out to the community at large, just parents of current students. Got this sent through a friend. Wish I had known about the other meetings. We sent it out to 10,000 email addresses. We sent it out to the paper. We put it on social media. We've been trying to get information out everywhere we can. We cannot spend any money, or right now we're volunteering our time to do this. We would do mailings or things like that, but we can't spend any money until February 1st. And nor should we, because it cuts into what money should go to our teachers' salaries and to kids. So we'll continue to try to get information out the best we can. We've ended up with, honestly, we've had about 200 attendees through all the meetings, which is really good considering how we generally get attendance at some meetings. Did you share what the average annual operational costs are currently through the Dexter Wellness Center through Power Wellness? I don't know that number off the top of my head. Will a recording be available? We are recording this. I'll get it set up on the website this week. We'll try to get it set up into a format because it had like 10 minutes before we got to have to edit that out while we sat here waiting to log in. So we'll get that set up on the website somewhere or on our YouTube channel. So thank you. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us. We will set up some more updates as we continue to move forward. So we appreciate you taking the time, and have a great evening. Stay warm, and we'll see all our kids in school tomorrow. All right, I'm going to shut it down. Thank you.